Peace and power drop nation. I gotta give some love, man, right quick to the SON bookstore out in the Merck Park out here in LA. You know what I mean? I just been retracing, you know what I'm saying, just some of the old stomping grounds, man. That's a spot, man, right next to the world stage, infamous jazz spot, jazz, all that, you know what I'm saying? Whole block full of just culture. You know what I mean? That's kind of like our mini Harlem in a way. You know what I'm saying? That's our culture center out here in LA. Everybody know about Leimert Park. It's always going down, you know what I'm saying? So we're looking to, you know what I'm saying, start really making the presence there as 432, dropping our swag frequency events right there. Shout out to the S1 bookstore. It's right next door to the world stage. So if you're in LA, look up the SO1 bookstore, ESOWAN bookstore, the Merck Park, right next to the world stage, infamous jazz spot. That's where my pops, you know what I'm saying, just, you know what I'm saying, did his dance, you know what I'm saying. My pops did his dance, man, and that's where we held it down when he passed. So love to everyone. So it just feels good. Like the whole vibration is just amazing. And S1 has all of the books that I need and I want. I went in there and I saw everything. Everything. I ain't gonna tell you everything, because if I tell you everything I saw, you might scoop it up before I get it. You know what I mean? So I don't want you to do it. But I do got to give love to the S1 bookstore. So we hope to be having some events down there, you know what I'm saying, promoting them and just being a part of the culture there, right next to the world stage. Hopefully we can get involved with them as well to start having our events with our independent artists performing in 432 hertz, to have us all together, and that frequency would be amazing. So that's one of the locations we're looking for our swag freak events, swag frequency events with the artists, the frequency, that King Ra the Great, chesstutors.org, bringing the Chess Academy, you know what I'm saying, teaching chess as we teach about the drop, you know what I'm saying, as we enjoy great music and a frequency that gets us off of that McDonald's, off of that 440 hertz. So yeah, man, I picked this up today and I couldn't wait. Kings to Uno, I think he dropped a PDF on me, man. So everybody go subscribe to Uno, man. Get into the root of it all. He truly, man, is an in-depth brother, you know what I'm saying, multi-dimensional brother, you know what I'm saying, that really always keeps the foundation, man, just on lock. You know, it has so much great energy, man, to add to the all across the board on the puzzle, man. So the PDFs are on deck. I'll put it up in the library. We're getting it popping, but yeah, man, I just chilled out. I was about to, you know what I'm saying, it's just quiet around here, man. And of course, I got kicked out of my office again, but you see me, man, making it work. I'm making it work. I'm getting in where I fit in. You gotta love it. You gotta love it, man. Kings to J Stu. Kings to J Stu, man. Talked to the fam, Jason Stewart, today. He's, you know what I'm saying, making his transition, man. You know what I'm saying, going back home to the trees, man. You know what I'm saying? So one by one, you know what I'm saying, cats is going to start, you know what I'm saying, motivating. I'm saying back towards that Zion. You know what I'm saying? As we start exiting the cities and all that, you know what I mean? And as we work together, the best thing we can do is support each other, man. So we're going to, you know, be up with J Stu. We're going to get a GoFundMe going for J Stu as he starts making moves, you know what I'm saying, going towards Utah, and, you know what I'm saying, many more, man. We'll start getting inspired and encouraged, you know what I'm saying, as folks start getting out the cities, man, getting off the plantation, think it's a game. I told you the drop ain't going to be doing drops on YouTube. I'm just here for a very limited time as we start getting our plans and everything together, you know what I'm saying, and going through what we're going through. So we all got to start, you know what I'm saying, looking forward instead of looking behind. We know what's coming. You don't have to, you know what I'm saying, be mesmerized by tanks. You don't have to be mesmerized by these animals. You're afraid of animals in the wilderness, but you want animals on tanks rolling through your cities. And that's what we're facing right now. Like, what are the options? What are the options? You protest for every, you know what I'm saying, unlawful situation, but you're not included in the law at all. So as an invader and as a prisoner, your invader does not include prisoners in their law. So you got to go home. We got to go home. Those that are Indios have to be Indios. You have to connect to your Mother Earth. You have to connect to your shaper, your vibration, your Father, your law, your order. Return to your Father's house and receive your mother. Receive wisdom again. Because with wisdom, with your mother, with wisdom, the framer and the shaper, with wisdom, you have the creativity to have rulership. You can be a wise kingdom. With wisdom, you can conquer. A kingdom stands with wisdom and falls without wisdom. But wisdom rests when you are in order of your Father's house, like any house. And that's where we're getting out the cliche. So we'll be right back with that part 7. I just picked up, and I turned to chapter 8. And first thing I saw, man, where was I? Oh man. Yeah, I got it's a lot of babies in this, man. It's a lot of babies in this, man. I was very happy, man. Again, shout out to the Essawan bookstore. Shout out to Tom, you know what I'm saying, in the Essawan bookstore. The brother is holding it down. They got so much drop, so many books, man. I mean, it's such a wonderful environment, man. So, gotta give them love. Columbus's Golden World. Man, I mean, how many ways do you want to slice this turkey, man? You were found in a golden world, in a paradise. I showed you the book Ame'rican Holocaust. Donald Stannard, or David Stannard, saying that they thought they were in a dream. The Spaniards, the soldiers, thought they were dreaming. They literally thought they were in a dream. He thought he would find heaven here, Eden here. Oh, this is about to get good. I'm just going to read chapter 8. I'm going to try to be real fast, man. Real on the lickety split running time. Lego. This high sea was most necessary for me, Columbus wrote in his journey for September 23rd, 1492, 17 days out at sea after a month-long stopover in the Canaries. But now the crew were becoming restless, and there was loud grumbling among them that they would never get back to Spain. They had encountered few winds blowing back eastward, and on this day the waters were so becalmed that the soldiers claimed that the sea simply was not high enough to bring them home again. But then the waves rose dramatically without even a wind, so that everyone was astonished and silenced for the time being. This is when Columbus made the entry just quoted, adding that nothing like this had ever been seen save in the time when the Jews went out of Egypt and complained against Moses, who had brought them out of captivity. We do not know much concerning Columbus's crew of about 90 men aboard the 3 ships, but at least one of them was an Israelite whose presence as such was not merely accidental. This was Luis de Torres, a convert of possibly only that year, so I never heard of an Israelite convert. I heard of a Jew convert. I mean, how do you convert into a bloodline? Right, so, all right. He was said to have known Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic, and had been brought along by Columbus specifically as an interpreter. So he brought someone that can speak Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic. One of the purposes of the voyage, all right, watch out for the hook. Here we go. One of the purposes of the voyage, as we have seen, was to find the great Khan. The great Khan, Genghis Khan. So according to Lost Pride, all right, here we go. So one of the purposes of the voyage to America was to find Genghis Khan, the great Khan, which now ties into the story of them looking for India, right? Vindia, right? And with the brother Lex, you know what I'm saying, is Hammer Time dropping on the India Chamite, Canaanite connection. So he's looking for India and Genghis Khan, according to this story. He's looking for India and Genghis Khan. So he's tying Genghis Khan to India right there. Khan, Cham, and Taurus was to be the mouthpiece for this encounter. All right? So he was the interpreter, presumably on the basis of his Hebrew. So why is Columbus bringing a Hebrew interpreter to Negroes in America? The same reason he said he's coming to the holy city to conquer Mount Zion. And he said he's coming to America to conquer the holy city of Mount Zion in the Biblioteca de Colombina in Sevilla, Spain. Click the links below, right below, and look at the recordation for yourself. Columbus said he's coming to America to seize the holy city. Why is he coming here to seize the holy city? And why is he bringing a Hebrew interpreter? Let's go. Perhaps Columbus and his supporters had decided that the great Khan, reported on by Marco Polo and others, might be the Israelite king who dwelt across the river from Prester John. And I tried to look into this Prester John. I ain't had time yet, but I just had to crack it open. But I think it had something to do related to Ethiopia. So they're calling Genghis Khan, he said, reported on by Marco Polo and others, might be the Israelite king who dwelt across the river from Prester John. So I got some very lightning speed brothers out there that's going to dig on that. So, and sisters, you know what I'm saying, that's going to dig on that. Land was sighted at last on the night of October 11th, and on the next morning, which was a Friday, the Spaniards received the island that they subsequently called San Salvador in the Bahamas. There they saw nude men, and some of them set out for shore in armed boats. The boat, bearing Columbus and two of his captains holding the banners of Spain, preceded the rest. When they landed, they stepped ashore and, staying close to the boats, solemnly proclaimed possession of the island in the name of the king and the queen. The no doubt astonished islanders gathered around. And as Columbus writes of his historic encounter, in order that they might regard us with great friendship. All right, so after he comes down, he gets off the boat, he puts his flag down. I conquer this land for Isabella and King such and such, for Spain. And then he gets, everyone gathers around him. You know, like what? And according to him, he just gave him some trinkets, and he just got happy and shit. You know what I'm saying? So when you read, you know, and again, you're reading what he's writing, right? So obviously we can't trust these people's interpretations. We definitely can't trust Columbus's whatever he's writing. It's not like he's going to be writing everything, you know, so truthful, so true and true. But he's going to be writing it for, everything he did was for a purpose. Everything he did was for the perception of what he was painting as a picture to the king and queen of Spain. It wasn't, you know, what he was saying to his homie in the corner of what he really felt. He was writing, these were his public writings that he was giving a perception of what he was doing. He wanted to paint a picture, an image. Would he use deception? Of course. So as we read even his writings, he's going to have his descriptions and shit. But don't get lost in the sauce, you know what I'm saying? You know. But let's get the babies out. Let's go. So, so they got the trinkets out because I perceived that they were a people who would be better. Wait. All right. Back it up. In order that they might regard us with great friendship, because I perceived that they were a people who would be better delivered and converted to our holy faith by love than by force. Is this Columbus deception, or is this the real Columbus? By love rather than by force. Well, obviously we know, based on history, this ain't the Columbus we know. So we see him using a deceptive, you know what I'm saying, skewed reality, painting a perception to, you know, Isabella and them. By love rather than by force. Gave some of them a few red caps and glass beads, which they hung around their necks, and many other things of little value, which gave them a great deal of pleasure, and so won them over to us that it was a marvel. Oh, the magic of his trinkets. The act here may hardly seem a worthy offspring to the thought, but Columbus had shipped to Guyana a few times and knew the value that small trinkets could have against the background of the unusual treatment of primitive peoples by Europeans in this epoch. Columbus's trifles shine forth like jewels. Columbus was in the latitude of the Canaries, and it was clearly the aboriginal peoples of those islands who were now providing his mind with a worldly model by which to perceive the islanders in front of him. There is a touch of Bocaccio's Canarians in this ensuing description. Then they came swimming to the ship's boats where we now were, bringing us parrots and clothes of cotton thread, as well as spears and many other things, and we took them in exchange for other things we gave them, like small glass beads and hawk bells. In short, they gave us, as they received, all with the utmost pleasure. But they seemed to me a people very poor in every aspect. They go all about naked, as when their mothers bore them. The women too, apparently, although I saw all I saw of them was one very young girl. I only saw young men, none of them seemed more than 30 years old. They were very well formed, with very handsome bodies and very fine faces. Their hair was slick and rough. And then you're going to hear him describe it as smooth. So smooth, slick, and rough is all almost like that of a horse's tail. And they wore it down to the tops of their eyebrows, except for a little in back, which they let it grow long and never cut. Some of them painted themselves a sooty color, though they are, in fact, the color of the Canarians, neither black nor white. Somewhere in between, like brown. Some paint themselves white, some red, some whatever color they can find. Some paint their faces, some their whole body, some only their eyes, and some only their nose. They do not carry arms or even know what they are. We showed them swords, and they grabbed them by the blades and cut themselves in their ignorance. Do you believe it? Do you believe that? I don't know. Maybe they never seen a sword. In that way, maybe they didn't have those type of weapons of war. Maybe those were certain weapons, delivered by certain angelic forces upon certain areas. Maybe we just didn't get down with certain weapons of war like that, certain weapons of destruction, like they're, what he's saying right here. It says they do not have any iron. Do you believe that we had no iron? It's hard to believe that we had no iron. But in his interpretation, maybe he means in terms of weaponry, we had no iron weaponry. I don't know. I know there's a lot of high-tech stuff going down over here. So to imagine there's not iron over here when Egypt is here, so maybe he's just writing this stuff just to paint a certain picture that we're just so dumb we never don't know what an iron or sword is. But you can look and find these artifacts coming out the Grand Canyon that show they knew everything. Right here. The Maya here. But let's go. You know what I'm saying? This is where we got to, connect our own dots. You know what I'm saying? Is that what he found? Is that how it was? That's very difficult to grasp. But let's go. Right. As he contemplated these people, was Columbus perhaps recalling the peaceable multitude who greeted Edris's men from the sea? Edris, okay? His idyllic view of life on this and other islands he was to encounter during the fall and winter of 1492 to 1493 is even more strongly emphasized in the letter he dispatched on returning home to his patrons, Luis de Santangelo and Gabriel Sanchez. They manifest great love towards all others in preference to themselves, writing about you. That you manifest more love towards others than you do even yourself. That's his general description of you, Negro. Don't you still love your oppressor, even though you know they are oppressing you? You have a degree of love and everyone knows, like, damn, you have every reason to hate every fucking body. Historically documented reasons to hate every fucking body. They don't understand why, even though that comes out overall, we still ain't acting like we hate every. On average, we don't act like we hate everybody. There are more extreme cases than others, but that's just not how we go about life. Even after all this oppression, we still don't go about life acting like we hate everybody. They're gearing up for that. They're trying to force that situation because that feeds into their agenda, and we all know that. But let's go. They manifest great love towards all others in preference to themselves, he writes. They all give objects of great value for trifles or little nothing, and content themselves with very little or nothing in return. In fact, he claims, he had to intervene when his sailors went in for unfair bartering. At all times, he strove to set, a good example. At all times, he strove to set a good example to the natives, he says, because he regarded them as excellent candidates to become Christians by persuasion. Maybe he regarded us as excellent candidates because he knew we were Hebrew. And there was no real separating us from our Creator. or not. They practice no kind of idolatry. This is what he writes on page 94. Now we know Egypt was here and there were idols here. But again, we're talking case by case. So sometimes when you hear them describe, oh, their hair was rough, or their hair was smooth, they're talking about different people, case by case, different tribes, case by case. So, keep that in mind. So he says they practice no kind of idolatry. So whoever he came into contact with, these particular people practice no idolatry, but have a firm belief that all strength and power and indeed all good things are in heaven, and that I descended from there with these ships and sailors. And it was under this impression that I was received after they had cast aside their fears. So now they're saying that, oh, okay, just like the Montezuma thing, they thought we were gods. And you saw how, a couple drops ago, you know what I'm saying, those isolated tribes were acting towards, seeing a white person for the first time. What did they act like? Right? So you remember that, go back a couple drops or, look that up, however you look it up. Isolated tribe in the Amazon or whatever the case is, making first contact. And that gives you a picture. So were they convinced that something angelic was happening? Well, yeah, see, angels in heaven doesn't mean the creator. We know that now the first heaven is the celestial. But the celestial is also the underworld, in the perspective that it is underneath the firmament, the roof. That's why we get back to the cliches and the Papal and the annals of the Coxsacquels, where they are describing their conception of the world as a house. A house with foundations, a house with a roof, a firmament, validating exactly what's in the Torah. Firm, fixed, and immovable with a firmament. And somehow we get a spinning ball, a firmament that's spinning in a ball. But let's see what Columbus has to say about the round sphere. And this is going to get really, really exciting. I'll get there. Let's go. So they practice no kind of idolatry, but they had a firm belief that all strength and power and indeed all good things are in heaven, and that I descended from there with these ships and sailors. And it was under this impression that I received after they had cast aside their fears. There had been rumors and indications among the peoples encountered of other natives of the island, so there's other tribes, who were fierce and warlike, and who ate human flesh. So maybe those were the tribes that had idols. Cannibals, Caribs is cannibal. The Caribbean is literally the land of cannibals. So, yeah, we had Hijack City here already before Columbus was Hijack City. We were fighting cannibals. We were fighting giants. The shit was going down. Warlike and ate human flesh, but none of them appeared in person on this voyage. I did not find, Columbus writes, any bestial men among them, as some of us had expected, but on the contrary, men of great indifference, or men of great deference and kindness. So we just found nothing but very kind men here. The onset of the warlike multitudes was for another day. Neither are they black like the Ethiopians, he goes on. Their hair is smooth and straight, for they do not dwell where the rays of the sun strike most vividly. So whatever specific group he's talking about here had smooth and straight. Before it had rough. We had rough before, now we have straight over here. So whatever group, when he says black like the Ethiopians, he ain't saying they ain't brown. He ain't saying they are dark. He's saying they are dark as the Ethiopians. black as the Ethiopians. So, trying to get some perspective here. But it's difficult combing through Hijack 101 Columbus himself. Reading Columbus's words is like, literally, man, just belly flopping in Hijack, in the swimming pool of Hijack City. The ocean of Hijack City, belly flop, is reading Columbus's writings. So, bear with me. We're going to try to comb and get the babies out the bathwater. But damn, that bathwater is salty. All right. So this clearly was meant as reassurance to anyone who felt as he did that black men tended to be more barbarous than whites of any condition. Columbus returned home in 1493, thinking that Cuba was part of the Asian mainland. While there, he had even sent Louis de Torres on an expedition to find the Great Khan, Genghis Khan. Here we go. So while there, he, Columbus, sent Louis Torres on an expedition to find the Great Khan. So that was a big part of, he was looking for Genghis Khan. Now, the Great Khan, which I just can only assume we're talking about Genghis Khan. If there's another Great Khan, let me know. But this is 1493. So I'm just trying to get this timeline together of when Genghis Khan, and, if he's looking for Genghis Khan in 1493, the Great Khan, you tell me what this is. Yeah, I'll put the PDF up, I'm saying, as well. You tell me, you read it, you tell me. So, all right, let's keep going. Is Genghis Khan still cracking in 1493? Is that what we're talking about? Had a wonderful day today, though, Felt good, man, especially talking to Jay Stu, him talking about his plans and all that just made it all just feel good, man, validated, man, just knowing, all of our family that is getting off the grid, each and every one of them that unplugs out of this, it's freedom. You talking about people that is taking a step toward freedom. What are you doing? You know you ain't going to get free in the loop that you're in. You know it's going to take you breaking out that loop, and even if everyone thinks you're crazy. But what would Harriet Tubman say? She was talking to people like you, saying we have to go. They was like, nah, we're comfortable here. She's an indigenous woman. That's why she knew the drop of the Underground Railroad. She knew where to go. She had the drop on the terrain because she's from here. Does that make sense? She's not African. Harriet Tubman is not African. An African would not have all the drop of the mainland and all the secret land drop. She's indigenous. She knew the terrain. And what would she tell you when you peep thinking that we're crazy for saying get out the cities? She'll tell you get off the plantations. What did they do? They put you in concrete cities away from your home, your trees, your mountains, your rivers, your valleys. And they took all that and put you in little projects. And they want you to live the rest of your life and die in the projects, in the jail cells. You don't have to be behind bars to be in a jail cell. But let all y'all try to leave the cities and you will see that they'll be like, no, go back to jail. We need you in cities. Work. Pay your taxes. Let's go. So, he sent Torres on a mission to find the Great Khan. But he nevertheless clearly felt himself to be closer to the region that Ali and some others had gone on referring to as the Fortunate Islands. The Fortunate Islands. Research the Fortunate Islands. Now we're talking about heavenly terrain, gold, Columbus's gold world. You are from the gold world. They say new world, you're from the golden world. You're from these worlds, these copper-colored races they found here. You're from the Fortunate Islands. You're from paradise to these people. And you think you're just a nigga because they had to make you feel like that so they can jack your paradise. Referring to as the Fortunate Islands in spite of the Canaries, then to Ethiopia in any sense of the term. I'll say that again. But nevertheless, he clearly felt himself to be closer to the region that Ailey and some others had gone on referring to as the Fortunate Islands in spite of the Canaries than to Ethiopia in any sense of the term. He had come to the part of the world where East meets West. So he had come to the part of the world where East meets West, but his approach to it was westward. So was his vision of it, westward. We can see in Columbus's outlook that the first glimmers of an unfavorable comparison to be made often by him and his successors between the black men of the old world and most of the Tawny men of the new. Now, I ain't got my computer. It's way back there. I'm not going to run over there and all right, fine. Nah, man. I can't let this slide. Man. I can't let you off the hook. I love you, man. I love you too much to let you go. Tawny. I'm going to put in Tawny. Matter of fact. All right, let me get this one first. All right, it's a Tawny, light brown, orange, yellowish, copper color. You get it? Images of Tawny. Now they want to put their tanned images, right? So they put tanned white people when you look up Tawny, which is funny. Because all they do is tan to get, color. Right? Alright, so, but, you keep scrolling down. And you start seeing some copper colored people popping up. Yeah, man. But for the most part, they like to put tanned white images under Tawny. Tawny tan. Now, then they'll give you a Tawny owl, which is brown. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm going to go into the online etymological, a dictionary that everybody loves. And I'm going to put in Tawny. Alright. I don't know if you can see it. You probably cannot read it from there, so I'll read it to you. Alright. Tan colored. So you get tan colored from Anglo-French, late 14th century, from Anglo-French, tawny, of or like the brownish yellow of tan leather. From Old French, tanné, meaning dark brown. Body bad for the illusion. Dark brown. So they push it up into lighter So light that when you Google Tawny, you must see white. Except for the tawny owl. You get her tanned or super light. And then you go to your online etymological dictionary. And it says from Old French, tanné, dark brown, tan. Alright. And it goes into tawniness and all that. Reddish, ruddy. Then you get back into the ruddy, red, tawny. Alright, so let's get back to it. I told y'all, don't make me go get my laptop. And you did it anyway. Alright. Let's take it all home. I told you I'm gonna do this. It's gonna be short. We're not going to exceed a limit. Where were we? Y'all made me lose my place. All right. Get my light here. All right. We can see in Columbus's outlook the first glimmers of an unfavorable comparison to be made often by him and by his successors between the black men of the old world, Africa, Assyria, Phrygia, and most of the tawny men of the new, dark brown, copper color. This attitude was taken up by the first chronicler of Columbus's expedition, Peter Martyr of Angara, who wrote only a few years later concerning the natives of what he was the first to call the New World. So it came out of his imagination that you're in a new world, because it's new to them. So when I ask my brothers which world is older, and they say, oh, that's the New World, you know you're thinking like them, right? I mean, I can back it up for you. Peter Martyr of Angara, who wrote only a few years later concerning the natives of what he was the first to call the New World. He coined the phrase the New World. So I ask you, whose mind are you in? Who's calling it the New World? He coined it. And ever since then, it's been new to you too, right? That's why you got no rights here. Because it's new to you. Let's go. That the inhabitants of these islands have been ever so used to live at liberty. So they're used to living at liberty. You, Negro, are used to living at liberty. In play, in pastime. Playing ball. So you, Negro, are used to living at liberty in play and pastime, that they can hardly handle with the yoke of servitude which they attempt to shake off by any means they may. That's why we keep fighting to get free, because we don't like servitude. They even compare other dark races that they also are putting in servitude and show you how much we really don't like servitude. That they can hardly away with the yoke of servitude, which they attempt to shake off by all means they may. This surely is an implied comparison with the people of Guyana, who did submit to the yoke of servitude from Peter's point of view, and whom he occasionally manifests a firm dislike. Indeed, Peter, a Renaissance humanist at heart, was palpably a man who looked westward rather than eastward, for images of ideal life. So he looked over here rather than over there for images of ideal life. So you, Negro, copper color, tawny, dark brown, you lived the ideal life to the person that coined the phrase New World. It was your life that was ideal. That's why they look at you and say, that's ideal. That's so ideal, I have to steal it all, even if I have to kill. I said, that's so ideal that I have to steal it all, even if I have to kill. And that's real spill. What's the deal? I'm saying, man, y'all get me, man. I'm crazy. Let's go. That's Peter's point of view. All right, images of ideal. You're ideal. All right, but now you got a different perspective of ideal. You look on the TV, you look at that new definition of Tawny, the tanned person rather than the actual tawny person. Now you look at the tanned person as ideal. All right. Like neither Ethiopians nor Orthodox Jews, though he was always a good friend to the new Christians, he was, on the other hand, so inspired by what he learned in the New World natives that let me back it up. He was, on the other hand, so inspired by what he learned of the New World natives that he, even more than Boccaccio, was able to find in the West for Ovid's airy nothings a local habitation and a name. And surely, if they had received our religion, he writes, I would like to think most happy of all men, if they might therefore or therewith enjoy their ancient liberty, a few things content them, having no delight in such superfluities, or, bullshit, for the which, in other places, men take infinite pains and commit many unlawful acts, and yet are never satisfied, whereas many have too much and none enough. But among these simple souls, now just look how you phrases that. These simple souls, with wisdom, things are simple. Someone could have all the knowledge in the world and be very complex, very complicated, and someone else can break it and give you a very simple version. And it's when you can put it in the most simplest form that you know someone is maintaining the understanding and grasping it and can now communicate it in its most simplest breakdown, most simplest form. Energy, frequency, and vibration. Simple. So they're calling you the simple soul, not the complicated, abstract, outward soul. The inward, simple connection. You have a direct energy transfer flow, a ruach breathed into your nostril directly, a connection, direct, simple. You don't have to go through hijacks to get to your creator. You don't have to go through any hijack or believe any hijack came and then his death is what gives you all this salvation and saves you because this guy died. Meanwhile, you died in the hundreds of millions and were crucified and were fried. And just a few of you stayed alive, and you're the remnant today of the children that survived. So now you don't have to thank your oppressor for bringing you your God. Thank you for coming to my island, my land, and bringing me your cross and saying, convert or die. Separating me from my framer and my shaper. Believing in your idol. Complicated. You're the simple soul. But among these simple souls, a few clothes served the naked, weights and measures are not needful to such as cannot skill of craft and deceit, and have not the use of pestiveris, money. So they don't even need money. You don't need money when you're in a kingdom of freedom. It's just, what do you need, brother? Here's what I got. Everybody has enough because everything you do is for the whole. It's not about survival of the fittest. It's we survive if we help each other. We die if we don't help each other. You don't have to like each other to help each other. You don't have to like each other to do it for the sake of the whole and to think in lines of the whole and not disconnect ourselves in an illusion of seclusion. So, these simple souls, need just a few clothes, weights, and measures are not needful to such as cannot skill of craft and deceit. Cannot skill of craft and deceit. So we're not skillful at being crafty and deceitful. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm getting from it. These people don't work with deceit. They don't need money. The seed of innumerable mischiefs, which is money. The seed of innumerable mischiefs, so that if one shall not be ashamed to confess the truth, they seem to live in the golden world. You Negro, you live in the golden world. They found you in paradise. And that's why David Stoddard, Danner, I gotta get his name. David or Donald, Dan, Mr. Stanner. And that's why he's telling you that he found you in paradise. He found you in paradise. They found you, they thought they were dreaming. And now they're saying, like, look, the way that these people were running around, I might be crazy, but it seems ideal. It seems like they're in a natural state, a balance with the framer and the shaper. Now, clearly, however the Most High, however we panned out, things were not what they were originally, and therefore the hijacks that were from Babylon here, from Egypt here, for the most part and overall, even if it was paradise to these people who came in chaos, we knew that there was an order that we were not on. So let's not get that confused, thinking that we were just in some perfect order. We're just in order in perspective of complete chaos. But there is a lot required of us. We are required to be hijack free. And I believe, like many of you believe, that you don't destroy hijack free. You can't, order doesn't destroy order. If you're not in chaos, you got nothing to worry about. But if you're hijacked, you're in chaos by default because your energy is being eaten alive. Your light is being dimmed, and it puts you in chaotic states. And we do chaotic things because we get in loops. Fruit loops. 7 McCall Fruit Loops. Let's go. Alright, so these people, is it so that if we shall not be ashamed to confess the truth, they seem to live in that golden world of the which old writers speak so much. They seem to live in the golden world of which old writers speak so much. What old writers? What old writers, man? He's talking about the old prophets. He's talking about even their old, Greek mythology writers. You know what I'm saying? Plato in there. He's talking about the most learned men in their world. What they speak of, we seem to be manifestations of it. That it must, if we're not in complete order, we are the remnant of that order, because it's still paradise to chaos. It's still paradise to heathen. In the heathen's eyes, you were like angels, man. You gotta think, I mean, if you're in the golden world, then the people that inhabit the golden world are damn near angels. And this is what they did. And they knew there would be recompense, just like October Scorpio. When recompense and retribution knock on your door, knock, knock. Who is it? Recompense and retribution. What's the password? Recompense and retribution. That ain't the password. Bang! Kick through the door. Line up. Slap the shit out of everybody. Recompense and retribution. You don't squat on somebody's land. You don't destroy them as a people. You don't forget about them, call them all kind of names and bywords and Negroes and blacks. And act like all these races is just now suddenly the same damn people, the same tribes. It don't matter who your daddy is. It don't matter who your father is. And your mama don't matter either no more, right? Wisdom don't matter. Not in the way they teach you. They separate it. They separate you. And they separate your house. The golden world of which old writers speak so much, wherein men lived simply and innocently without enforcement of laws, and where men lived simply and innocently without enforcement of laws, without quarreling judges and libels or libels, content only to satisfy nature, without further vexation for knowledge of things to come. Here then is another milestone in the early history of the noble savage, Columbus, who gave to the peaceable multitude of the islands the name Indios. Indios. Not Indians, Indios. So, Columbus gave you the name Indios. Of course, that's not your name. But what did he mean? Well, here's a couple theories, because he considered their habitat to be the Indies, okay? So maybe you're the Indios because he considered your habitat to be the Indies. Or because he considered their habitat to be the Indies, of course, but perhaps also because he thought of them as living in God, in Dios. Dios is God. Dios, Indios, Indios. So he's going from saying that you guys are living in the golden world. You guys are living in, what did he say? They seem to live in that golden world of which old writers speak so much, wherein men live simply and innocently, without enforcement of laws, without quarreling judges and libels, content only to satisfy nature, without further vexation for knowledge of things to come. So he's calling you Indios, meaning in God, maintained a vision like Peter's, but it was also more alive with religious and mystical implications than that of the rationalist clergyman. For the next few dramatic and ultimately disastrous years of Columbus's life, there was a contrast pull between the visionary and perhaps messianic streak in him on the one hand, and the man of affairs he had now become on the other. We're almost there. Only 7 months after his triumphal return home in March 1493, he was at sea again, this time leading to the newly discovered Indies, a fleet of 17 ships. So he went from 3 ships to 17, Now he's bringing an army. Here comes the invasion. Filled with seedlings and livestock, as well as some 12 to 1,500 colonists, or just straight up prisoners and thieves and thugs, colonists for the island of Hispaniola. It naturally fell upon the admiral to be in charge of the establishment of this colony, and though subsequently its administration was placed in the hands of a governor, the charge remained close to Columbus himself. The first governor was his brother Bartholomew. The affairs of the colony, however, with a largely roughneck population from home seeking to grab advantages wherever they could be found and pitted against a stunned, fearful, and increasingly hostile native population, proved to be more than the relatively unworldly Columbus brothers could handle. Other domineering interests arrived in the colony during the 3 years following its establishment, reviving, I think it's kind of blurred out, reveling, I think there's a reveling there, reveling the Columbus hegemony and inciting new ways of discontent. Reveling Columbus hegemony and inciting new ways of discontent. By the time the admiral returned home in June of 1496, his reputation had fallen under a cloud. So what happened? Well, he wasn't producing what he said he would. He wasn't bringing the gold he said he would. And people started to hear rumors that he's persecuting these innocent people. And not everybody was down with this shit. And so they was giving the crown a bad look. And say, man, you really going in on the Indios? For what? The things he was doing was unheard of. The tortures, all for the gold, all for the holy city, yet he wants to convert you to what he believes. Convert or die, right? As he brings his army in. So his reputation had fallen under a cloud, as if doing penance he wore the brown habit of a Franciscan friar, almost from the moment of his return. His third voyage to the New World, on which he finally embarked in May 1498, was permeated with the old visionary spirit once again. The letter he wrote to Ferdinand and Isabella reporting on this voyage is largely taken up with a search for the terrestrial paradise. So we go from gold world to paradise. Now, didn't I just say in that book, American Holocaust, they're saying in their documentation that they're finding you in paradise? That the streets were so clean, they had never seen anything like that. The marketplaces were so enormous and orderly and ordered, and the things they found there, it was just paradise to them. Then you hear again about this paradise, another version of the same paradise. And I ask you, are you in a terrestrial paradise that has been hijacked? Are you from a terrestrial paradise here that has been hijacked here, not just by Columbus, but by Egypt, Atlantis, all that Thoth, all that shit, all that stuff that does not predate the land and the sacred trees? Do you want your pyramids or your trees? What do you want? How are these pyramids built from the top, bottom? Were they carved out of sacred silicon trees? Do you want your pyramids or do you want your trees? Do you want your pyramids or your sacred mother trees? Do you want your order? Do you want the shaper? Do you want your father's law? Do you understand the balance of you go into a grown man's house who has union with a woman, maybe have children, married, you go into a household. You should feel the balance of the mother and the father. You should feel a balance of the energy of the house. You know the difference when you go into your homie's crib and he ain't got no girl. You know what I'm talking about. And he's just by himself living like a bachelor that has a certain energy. You know what I'm saying? If he is a masculine dude, it'll just be a bachelor pad. And you know the difference if you go into a woman's house and it's just, flowery and shit, you know what I'm saying? And you know the difference when you go into a household and you feel the masculine energy and the feminine energy. You know what I'm saying? That is the house. That is the framer and the shaper. That's what you've been split apart from and out of. That's why you're in a loop. That's why knowledge is not wisdom. And that's why you need both. That's why with wisdom, the Creator created the earth in the beginning with wisdom. With wisdom. How are you going to overcome? How are you going to exodus? How are you going to cry out to your trees? What vibration are you going to be in? With wisdom. With wisdom, you will know. With wisdom, you will hear. With wisdom, you will strategize. With wisdom, you will read. With wisdom, we will unite with wisdom. Let's get the rest. Come on. Hope everybody's feeling good. I hope everybody's feeling free, knowing that you're in a terrestrial paradise. Paradise. His third voyage to the new world on which he finally embarked in May 1498 was permeated with an old visionary spirit again. The letter he wrote to Ferdinand and Isabella reporting on his voyage is largely taken up with his search for the terrestrial paradise. Columbus in America. Negro, you. Tawny, copper color. Dark brown. A sense of awesome expectation fills his description of every stage of his journey. When I sailed from Spain to the Indies, he wrote, I found that as soon as I passed 100 leagues westward of the Azores, there was a very great change in the sky and the stars. All right, so we're talking about here, passing the Azores, he found a change in the sky and the stars, in the temperature of the air, and in the water of the sea. And I have been very diligent in observing these things. This striking, and to him portentous climate change is mentioned not once but 3 times in the course of the letter. When I reached the parallel of Sierra Leone and Guyana, he says in a more graphic repetition of the point, beginning with the unusually long southward course he followed, this time before heading out into the ocean, I found the heat so intense and the rays of the sun so fierce that I thought we should have been burned. This is, of course, the sun. This is, of course, the sun that, in Columbus's view, as in that of most of his contemporaries, has burned the Guyana Negro black. But then you learn from other, of these, scientists and researchers at the same time. Then they'll say, nah, it's not got nothing to do with the climate. No matter where this Indian is, they look like an Indian. You know what I'm saying? So some will say it has to do with climate. Others will say it's just your seed, no matter where you're at. You know what I'm saying? you're going to be your seed. You know what I'm saying? Let's keep going. So he says, so they were more black. More graphic repetition of the point, beginning with the unusually long southward course he followed at the time. This is, of course, the sun that, in Columbus's view, as in that of most of his contemporaries, has burned the Guyana Negro black. And although it rained and the sky was heavy with clouds, I still suffered the same oppression. So he got burned until our Lord was pleased to grant me a favorable wind. So he got a wind, or else his ass was getting burned up by the sun. Giving me an opportunity of sailing to the west, so that I reached a line where I experienced, as I have already said, a change of temperature. Immediately upon my reaching this line, the temperature of the sky became very mild, and the more I advanced, the more mildness increased. But I did not find the positions of the stars to change with these effects. All right, taking it home. This is just chapter 8. I'm just digging right, belly flopping into the hijack sea with Columbus himself. So let's go. Last couple pages. All right, so he did not find the position of the stars to correspond with these effects. According to the position of the stars, this was the latitude of Guyana, the further south Columbus ever was to travel in the New World. So that's as far south as he got is Guyana, according to this author. We now know that what he came to was the island of Trinidad and the adjacent Venezuelan coast, and the climate simply was not hot enough to satisfy any of the established notions of world geography. I look upon this as something new, he goes on. I think my opinion will be supported by that of others, that it is a short distance for so great a change to take place in the temperature. Columbus had come upon a mystery for which he is determined to propose a dramatic solution, and he does so with regard for all those myth makers of future generations who would make him the most ardent advocate of his time for the view. Listen up. So, myth makers of future generations, myth makers of future generations that would make him the most ardent advocate of his time for the view that the earth is a sphere. So they, were having this debate back then, proof that they were going in on, of course, this debate of earth being round or flat. Now they made Columbus their advocate that the earth was a sphere, because they're thinking, oh, he's going to either fall off if it's an edge. If it's flat, he'll just fall off. They didn't think, oh, he'll just keep going and there'll be more land. They say he'll fall off. But if he can go around and find India or whatever the case is, then it means he came around, or in their minds, he was going around and popping out the other side of the ball, which we know now is utter bullshit. So the whole premise of this particular making him the spokesman of the sphere thing is bullshit, based on the fact that they clearly thought he would pop out the other side of the ball. And all he did was find a new world, because he went further. And again, we say when you go further past the Antarctic ice, the wall that surrounds you, the 200-foot wall that surrounds you, in any direction you cross, you're going to find more land. And that is what they don't want you to know. You'll find more new worlds. Research the Japanese map that has over 33 more Americas all over, past in all directions, past the Arctic wall. Just like Game of Thrones, the wall. But this wall surrounds us all. So no matter which way you go in the sea, you're going to run into an ice wall. And you have to go up that ice wall, and you venture out, but they won't let you. According to the Antarctic Treaty, they protected all these powerful nations, protect the ice wall in a complete circle. They surround the whole thing so that you can't explore it. Why? Because they don't want you to find more land. So you could think you're overpopulated. So you could think that this is it, you're on a ball. If you're on a finite ball and they find more land, they can't tell you about it because then they can't squeeze it into their ball. They already told you you're on a ball and you have 26,000 mile circumference. They can't give you more land on the ball. That means they got to reprint all their globes and put more land on their globe in school. Where are they going to fit more land on their little finite globe? Their globe has a circumference. They can't keep expanding their globe because they find more land. So they don't tell you about the more land so that they don't have to touch the globes in the classrooms and revise Google Earth. That's a lot of work. So they just tell you you're spinning on a ball so that you don't think about more land because, hey, I'm on a ball. What do you mean? There can't be more land. I'm on a ball. But if you know you're on a flat plane, you know that it makes perfect sense. You keep going, you'll find more. All right, let's take it home. So they made him the spokesperson of this spherical thing. I have always read, he proceeds, that the world comprising the land and water was spherical. So he always read it, he says. Again, I have always read, Columbus proceeds, that the world comprising the land and the water was spherical and is testified by the investigations of Ptolemy and others. But I have now seen so much irregularity, so he's going against, even though they tried to make him a spokesman for the spherical earth, he is now going against it. He's not going to go into the flat earth, but look where he goes. He's going to go, he's about to go Neil deGrasse Tyson on him. Watch Columbus go Neil deGrasse Tyson. Watch this shit. This is awesome. Now you see where Neil gets it from. Let's go. Where we at? All right. I have always read, he proclaims, that the world comprising the land and the water was spherical, and as is testified by the investigations of Ptolemy and others. But I have now seen so much irregularity, as I have already described, that I have come to another conclusion respecting the earth. Uh-oh. What's Columbus's conclusion? Namely, that it is not round, as they describe, but of the form of a pear. A pear. Just like Neil deGrasse Tyson says. That means you have water being crushed by a force, a theory of gravity, into a pear shape. Now you have to show me an experiment of water being crushed by some magnetic force in the middle into a pear-shaped oblate spheroid and spin it at 1100 miles per hour on a wobble and hurl it at 67,000 miles per hour like NASA says Earth is traveling, and no water spins off even though you're in a vacuum of space. A vacuum. In a pear-shaped water spinning thing. Is that where you want to consciously be for the rest of your life? Spinning on a pear of water? Or are you firm, fixed, and immovable? And everything circuiting around you? Are you the center of your Father's eye? Get off of time and space. But the form of a pear, he said, it is not round as they describe, but of a form of a pear, which is very round, except where the stalk grows. The stalk. Stalk, tree. Is Columbus referring to our sacred trees? Let's go. Where the stalk grows, at which part it protrudes much higher, or like a round ball, in one part of which is prominence like a woman's nipple. So there's a little nipple, he's saying. The pair with the nipple, this being the part that is highest and nearest to the sky. This part is situated under the equator in this ocean sea at the end of the east. I call the end of the east that place where all the lands and islands terminate. So they're talking about the end of what? Just like World Beyond the Poles, where the celestial meets the earth. The ends of the east, right? So this part is situated under the equator in this ocean sea at the end of the east. I call the end of the east that place where all the lands and islands terminate. What's Columbus talking about? In other words, this wondrous region is so cool because of its height, on the same principle whereby there are snow-capped mountains in tropical Africa. This in turn affects the color of the inhabitants. Well, maybe, maybe not, right? I hear it both ways. When I was off the island of Arguim on the west coast of Africa, he explains, which is 20 degrees north of the equator, I found people black and the land very much burnt. And when after that I went to Cape Verde Islands, I found that people there blacker still. And further south we went, the more they approached the extreme blackness, so that when I reached the parallel of Sierra Leone, where as night came on, the North Star rose 5 degrees. The people were the blackest of all, and as I sailed westward, the heat became extreme. But then, across the ocean beyond the miraculous climate line, at a point where the North Star also rose 5 degrees, where the temperature was exceedingly mild, and the fields and foliage remarkable, fresh, and green, and as beautiful, excuse me, as beautiful as the gardens of Valencia. So, just like David Stoddard, American Holocaust says, the Garden of Eden, the gardens were beautiful. He compared it to a Venice, like this looked like Venice. Mexico looked like Venice, a large Venice with marketplaces and this mild climate. He said, as beautiful as the gardens of Valencia in April. Well, would that be as beautiful as the Garden of Eden? As the gardens of Valencia in April? Okay. The people were very graceful in form, whiter than the others I had seen in the Indies. So he's saying whiter or lighter. Not white. Remember that. Whiter than any others I had seen in the Indies. And these had long, smooth hair. So we will go from rough hair, smooth hair. All right. According to this description, right? Let's just surf the wave. Well, what else we got, Columbus? Clearly, Columbus thinks it fitting that the complexion of the Negro is not to be found in a part of the world to which is about to accord a very lofty status, to which he is about to accord a very, I'll read that again, as a long sentence. Clearly, Columbus thinks it is fitting that the complexion of the Negro is not to be found in a part of the world to which he is about to accord a very lofty status. The Holy Scriptures record, so this is Columbus. The Holy Scriptures record, he goes on, now approaching the crucial point, that our Lord made the earthly paradise that they found you in, Negro, copper color man, woman, that the Lord made the earthly paradise and planted in it the tree of life. We're back to the tree. So he's finding you in this paradise. In it is the tree of life. Where is your tree? Mountains were trees. And from it springs a fountain, which flows and divides into the four principal rivers of the world, the Ganges in India, the Tigris, and Euphrates. In here, there is a gap in the manuscript. So there's a gap in the manuscript, which divide a chain of mountains and form Mesopotamia, flowing from there into Persia and the Nile, which rises in Ethiopia and goes down to the sea at Alexandria. I do not find nor have ever found any account by the Romans or Greeks which definitively fixes the site of the terrestrial paradise, nor have I seen it laid down from authentic sources in any mappamundi, map of the world. Some place it in Ethiopia as the sources of the Nile, but others, traversing all these countries, found neither the temperature nor the altitude of the sun to correspond to their ideas respecting it, nor did it appear that the overwhelming waters of the deluge, of the flood, had been there. So it didn't appear that these waters had been to Ethiopia to make sense for this to be the location, according to this particular drop right here. Right? So I'll read it again. Nor did it appear that the overwhelming waters of the deluge had been there. Some pagans pretended to adduce arguments to the effect that it was in the Fortunate Islands, which are in the Canaries. Columbus eventually has rejected this later view, which he had entertained in days when it had still been possible for him to think of the Fortunate Islands as something far more wonderful and remote than the Canaries. I have already described my ideas concerning this hemisphere and its form. He reminds the readers as he approaches his dramatic conclusion. All right, here we go. And I have no doubt that if I could pass below the equator after reaching the highest point of which I've spoken, I would find a much milder temperature and a variation in the stars and in the water. Not that I suppose that place of utmost altitude to be navigable, or even to have water, or that one can even get up there for that matter, since I am convinced that it is the terrestrial paradise in America, to which no one may attain without the will of God. Since this startling opinion was to win criticism for Columbus, even from so stout a supporter as Peter Martyr, he was even eager to bolster his visionary conclusions and with them his credibility with a display of sound geographical argumentation, having discovered on this voyage the mouth of which we now know to be the Orinoco, for example. He argues for this river as proof that the terrestrial paradise must be nearby, because I have never read or heard of such quantities of fresh water coming out and mingling with the salty waters of the sea. Remember, same thing in the American Holocaust. They said the waters around Mexico were fresh water, not salt water. Let's go. Mingling with the salt waters of the sea. His idea is that the river must be a branch of one of the four that flow out of the paradise here, for it must descend from an abnormally high place to achieve such a volume. The true explanation that these abundant fresh waters are the discharge of a vast continent even occurred to him in passing, but this overwhelming reality, to be proclaimed only a year later by Amerigo Vespucci, clearly was less attractive to him than his own grandiose spiritual theory. The more I reason on it, however, this is a quote from Columbus, the more I reason on it, however, the more convinced I become that the place of which I have spoken is the terrestrial paradise. Going on to proclaim that he has raised the cross. He's raised the cross. Columbus has raised the cross, convert or die, Negro. and announce the glories of the king and queen in every land that he has discovered with people on it, living in paradise, in the golden world, terrestrial paradise he discovered and called it new. I mean, does Africa predate this terrestrial paradise that they heard about and was written about by the men of old? Have the old tales wrote about this people that he's finding? Does it seem like this so-called Assyria, this Africa, predates this area that was written about by Plato and them as mythology? And he's saying you people fit the description of this mythology, man. Now we're getting into the foundational legends and them finding proof, and why Columbus said, I'm coming to America to seize the holy city and Mount Zion. Now, who was fighting for it, my melanated brother and sister? Who was fighting for the holy city? Why did he take a Hebrew interpreter to the holy city, knowing he was looking for the terrestrial paradise? Let's get the last part. So he discovered in his precious part of the world, Columbus concludes, precious part of the world where they found you and enslaved you. Columbus concludes the letter with its most important immediate aim, a paean of self-justification, for his record was still tainted by the disasters of his regiment in Hispaniola, murdering all these angelic people, all these Indios, people in here, and his trouble. So tainted by his disasters of his regiment in Hispaniola, and his troubles were by no means at an end. Indeed, the next 2 years were to be all downhill from the terrestrial paradise. At the end of his third voyage of discovery, Columbus had put in at Hispaniola and found the affairs of the island under his brother Bartolome, still governor, and Diego, mayor of the newly founded city of Santo Domingo, in utter disarray. Factional strife had reached the point of open armed rebellion. Finally, in the summer of 1500, Spanish sovereigns had sent as their plenipotentiary to the colony of one Francisco de Bobadilla to settle all disputes. Bobadilla ended by sending all three Columbus's brothers back to Spain as prisoners. The man from the sea, the discoverer, who had begun as transformation of the world while harboring visions of terrestrial paradise and possible messianic pretensions, returned home 8 years later to the month after his initial historic landing in the New World, wearing not a crown of thorns, but manacles and chains. So that's the, chapter 8, Lost Tribes and Promised Lands. Love y'all. Just wanted to chill with y'all for a minute. We'll get back to the Papal, conclude with part 7, and keep it pushing. Love to Drive Nation. Stay, Chusa, Suda.